Welcome to Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega. This is episode number 31. We're recording it on Tuesday, August 18th, 2020 at 11:58 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, again, I'm going to try to present the information from an optimistic, positive perspective, because I think some of you need to hear that kind of perspective to appreciate the message and to understand, to accept what we need to do. You know, this is a work in progress as I do these. As I continue to scan through the news and not see much attention paid at all to how how we're going to be free of these pandemics. I mean, it just and it's not just that. It's that sometimes I fear that just by posing it as a positive perspective of let's create this wonderful world. And I think sometimes when I pose it like that, it's not really doing justice to the current situation, to the suffering of those animals, to the way that our reality works. So let's go back to morality some more. For that, of course, this pandemic is zoonotic, meaning that it comes from animals, either wild animals like bats and rats, who then infect domesticated animals like pigs and chickens, who then infect us, or it bypasses the wild animals. It's bred on, let's say, a factory farm, and just like for whatever reason, the pigs will develop a swine flu, or birds will develop an avian flu, and there's just this two-pointed contact. The moral part of this is, and I'm addressing 80 or 90% of you, 90% of you, who believe in God or a higher power in the United States, who believe, presumably, that there is justice, there's mercy, there's compassion. The belief in God or a higher power is generally a belief in authority, a divine moral authority, who in this case created this reality, governs this reality, and judges us. I understand that some of it doesn't feel right or make sense. If God is, for example, all powerful and all good, how could this be happening? Well, the Bible really doesn't say God is all good. God is quoted as saying that the world he created is good. God does this and deems it good. But in Isaiah 49, I believe, God says to Isaiah, I create good, I create evil. So, but, from our experience, we don't have to go to the Bible to understand the morality of this. As a matter of fact, the Bible really didn't tell us much about the immorality of slavery. It condoned it, or it didn't tell us much about the immorality of denying women various rights, like the right to an education, the right to an inheritance, to divorce in certain cases. So this is something that we understand. And so all right, so this pandemic was caused by zoonosis, by animal to human transmission of this contagious disease. That's how pandemics, influenzas, coronaviruses, bacterial infections. That's how they're communicated. That's how they're transmitted. And yeah, the premise, it seems extremely intuitive, commonsensical, from a religious perspective, a spiritual perspective, to have the conclusion that this is happening to us as a punishment for what we're doing. It's our quest to pay less, for what we buy. And in the past, that's led to sweatshops. That's led to a lot of terrible circumstances for many people in various situations related to many products, not just animal flesh, animal food products. But that's the foundation. We understand morality when it comes to animals. We have here in the United States laws against abusing a dog or a cat. Probably horses. There's actually laws protecting animals. There isn't a law protecting chickens. It's which is interesting. This is part of the evil we're facing. That basically we have an industry, a group of people who kind of like induce us to this immorality, who apparently have no qualms about creating these factory farms that routinely every day abuse and torture over 70 billion land animals every year. And they corrupt us. They tempt us, but you can't blame them completely. I mean, if we really cared so much about those animals, we would pay the 3/4 more for the price of our chicken and beef. Having it be not just free range, but cruelty free, not just organic, but again, not subject to any kind of cruelty. And then you'd have to, in the United States, 99% of the farms, the animal farms here, are factory farms. Where those kinds of being kind to animals is just not at all on their agenda. It's nothing they care about at all. Really, they're just. They operate as a business, and their bottom line is profit, And so again, I think for this episode, I want to try to just understand, why those of us who aren't vegan, about 98% of us in the United States can participate in this organized cruelty that's worse than the Holocaust, that's worse than slavery, much worse. And if you doubt that at all, just ask yourself, well, if you had a choice of spending a year as a slave or a year in a concentration camp or a year in one of these factory farms as one of those animals, what would you choose? And I'm relatively sure you choose either the Holocaust or the slavery, notwithstanding how horrible those are. This is not to say those aren't horrible also. But I think we have to acknowledge and admit that this factory farming is even more horrible than that. So how do we make sense of this? How do we make sense of this? People, the same people who pay people to abuse and torture chickens, to abuse and torture pigs and cows, will have dogs and cats as pets and birds, and treat them well and love them and And these same people understand, you may be one of these people, you understand that these animals feel pain. You're not, decades ago, I mean, for God's sake, like back centuries ago, some people were even making the absurd claim that Black people weren't even people. I mean, like, there's a lot of stupidity and a lot of just lying to oneself and to others that goes into a lot of this institutional cruelty. So, decades ago, the argument was, well, they're different from us. They don't really feel that much pain, but now we know so much better. It's beyond a doubt. And you know what they do to them? Like the chickens have as young chicks, they have their beaks cut off. And those beaks are not like our nails. That those beaks have nerve endings. They're in fact the chicken's primary organ for interacting with the world. Pigs have their tails cut off, so they're not chewing them off in their anger and their madness. Amidst the conditions they're kept in. And again, that's without anesthesia. How can you do this? How can you continue to do this? How can you continue to put it out of your mind? That's the question, because that's what you all do, right? You refuse to think about it, But no, when somebody finally confronts you, there's some of us out there that have been working on behalf of animal rights for decades, and we've taken cameras, video cameras, into these factory farms, and we've showed you close up some of what goes on there. I haven't done this myself, but there's so many videos on YouTube where people have done this and show you the conditions. And so, I mean, there have been documentaries about this. And what is the rationalization? What do you tell yourselves? Everybody's doing it? It's fine, because because I mean, my family's doing it, my neighbors are doing it, my friends, my coworkers, everybody I know is doing this. So we can't, so it's got to be all right. I mean, isn't that kind of like a similar argument to what must have been used in slavery? People born into, not perhaps as slaves, but as free people born into a country that has slaves. Let's say this is the 1700s, before there was an abolition movement, and and with some kind of like mindlessness, people just say, well, this is the way the world is, and and if it was wrong, if slavery was wrong, our politicians would tell us, and our respected civic leaders would tell us. I mean, we can, before mass media, 100, 200 years ago, before science as it has evolved today, that, we can do so much and understand so much. Yeah, there may have been, substantive reasons for going along with something like this. I mean, by my estimation, no. By my estimation, they've known for hundreds, several thousand years at least, that these animals feel pleasure and feel pain. But I guess since most people, or a lot of people, aren't farmers today, the only meat they see is in supermarkets. They don't see the process of either growing the meat or slaughtering it. So, I mean, I generally try to warn you, try to scare you in a way, try to, get you to understand that pandemic is not a rare event, that there were at least 3 brand new viruses, novel viruses, in the 2000s, and about 8 or 10 different, you know, epidemics, pandemics in the 2000s throughout the world. Some of them in Africa, some of them originated in China, one in Mexico. You know, I try to warn you that every epidemiologist will tell you it's not a matter of if, but when the next one's going to happen. And you know, and I'll explain to you how our airline flights, you know, our 4 billion flights a year, with each flight carrying, generally I'm imagining more than 50 people, perhaps 100 per airliner, just traversing the world. So, like, you know, an outbreak happens any part of the world, and all of a sudden in 24 hours it's everywhere in the world. And that could not have happened 150 years ago, 100 years ago. So you know, there's, you know, I try to warn you about, you know, it's not just these viruses, it's antibiotic resistance. You know, we use here in the United States, 80% of our antibiotics are used in these factory farms because they're so lacking in sterility. They're so dirty, so unsanitary, that we have to, like, keep these animals under a lot of antibiotics, so the horrible conditions they live in don't get them sick. It's not that they don't get sick now, you know, they get sick a lot, but again, you know, with antibiotic resistance, what happens is, like, we rely on antibiotics for operations, for, you know, when we occasionally get bacterial infections, and sometimes when we get viral infections, because what happens is when we get flus, for example, it will shut down our digestive system, and then create a breeding through the virus, create a danger of bacterial infection in our lungs. So anyway, you know, our antibiotics are getting less and less effective. But the theme of this episode is that I don't think I should have to scare you like this. I mean, I think it's good. I think, you know, the more you know this, the more you understand that, you know, the Congressional Budget Office predicted that this coronavirus is going to cost the United States about $8 trillion. And if you understand that, you know, these pandemics are becoming more and more prevalent, you know, who as a business person, as a store owner, a retailer, you know, who is in business for themselves, in a business that requires, you know, contact with people and all, and gets shut down in cases like this, who doesn't understand the absolute necessity to do whatever we can to prevent these pandemics? And naturally, what I've been suggesting is 0.5% of that $8 trillion that we're going to be spending on this, to create a world free of pandemics, you know, as free as possible, you know. And I would bet, you know, because basically it involves our stopping the farming of animals, not just on factory farms, but in regular farms, transitioning, as this episode series is about, to clean meat, cultured meat, lab-grown meat. It has different names, but it's a new industry called cellular agriculture that began in 2013. There are about 40, 50 startups now racing to bring these products. You know, they can now grow these chicken, duck, beef, pork, seafood, lobster. They can grow these food products in labs now. You know, they've demonstrated that across various products. They need to now scale up. And you know, at the level that they're progressing with $1.5 billion being invested in the field so far, it'll probably take them 10, 15 years to have these products in supermarkets in substantial numbers that will protect us. So, you know, this is about, again, let's, as soon as Biden gets in January, let's spend that money. Let's not, you know, inject $50 billion to attract the brightest minds in biology, and, you know, to attract a lot of young people, a lot more resources. You know, they have to build these, and a lot more investment, because, you know, if our government invests $50 billion in this industry, the livestock industry is worth about $1.3 trillion. That's 3 times the amount of the cell phone industry, you know, worldwide. And so, yeah, if this government throws $50 billion at it, which is, again, 0.5% of what we'll be paying for this one, you can bet that people are going to see the writing on the wall for factory farming and the farming of animals. They're going to transition their money from investing in Cargill and Tyson, those companies that perpetuate the system, to investing in these new startups and in this new industry, creating new companies. And certainly, you know, if Tyson, Cargill, if they want to join this, by all means. But the amount they've invested so far is kind of like my, you know, on my income, which isn't all that much, investing a dime or a quarter. You know, they really need to step up to the plate to really be sincerely behind this, rather than just to be opportunistic. You know, they want to remain on top, so whatever. So again, let's, you know, and the reason I'm dealing with the morality again is because I'm suspecting that that you need to be confronted with this, that this message of, oh yeah, we're going to create such a wonderful world when we stop doing this, when you stop, you know, paying people to abuse and torture animals. I'm wondering whether that works. You know, the problem with our world today is nobody confronts anyone. I mean, we'll confront, you know, no, we'll confront people for certain things. We'll confront our politicians. You know, we've been confronting the police for brutality. We've been confronting the Me Too movement when men, kind of mostly men, basically sexually discriminate or sexually abuse women. You know, it's not like, you know, we're completely amoral. But my God, I mean, like global poverty, you know, climate change, especially this, because this involves so much blatant evil, blatant abuse and torture. You know, that our clerics don't talk to their congregations about this, that teachers don't teach kids this, that politicians don't talk about this, that the media rarely covers this. That tells you a lot about the kind of society we are here in the United States, as well as the kind of world we live in. You know, we're living in a delusion that we are good people. You know, fine, we do a lot of good. You know, a lot of you, you know, have raised families, you know, work hard, sometimes 2 jobs. It's not, you know, it's not that you don't do a lot of good, fine, you know, and you know, we've done a lot of good collectively. But, you know, imagine, you know, somebody who's an upstanding member of a community, and they're you know, they're doing it all the time, but then, you know, they're working, let's say, for a large company, and they extort, you know, a large amount of money, or they sexually abuse a woman or kill someone, or, you know, do something real horrible. Then all of a sudden, you know, that becomes important. You know, their goodness in the past is, you know, kind of one both doubted, you know, become skeptical. And, you know, regardless of that, you know, people think, well, you know, this person was good and the person turned bad. Well, this seems to be happening to us as a country, as a world. Yes, we've done good before. We ended slavery. We've vastly improved human rights. You know, we have a ways to go. You know, and we know this. We understand this, and we're trying to you know, end police brutality right now. You know, Black Lives Matter movement and all. But come on, I mean, like, again, I have to do many more episodes on this, like this, to delve into the morality. How, you know, to understand, you know, how is it that you as a moral person, you know, who probably has a cat or a dog, and certainly understands that these animals suffer and you know, feel joy also. How do you participate in this? What do you tell yourself? You know, how do you deny this? You know, and that's, you know, that's perhaps something that, you know, because, you know, I've been dealing with the science. You know, vaccines are going to take 15 years probably, you know, before we have universal vaccines. This industry, if it's left at the $1.5 billion funding scale now, will probably take 10 years or longer to bring products to market. You know, I go through the science, I go through the practical realities of this, but you know, it's like with climate change. You know, you need to address the morality of this. You know, because the practicalities are just like they're evading your appreciation. They're just, you're not understanding the risk that we're putting our children, our great, you know, our grandchildren, great grandchildren, and ourselves in. You know, and so, all right, we have about a minute left. I've got some good news today. As of today, this podcast is being distributed through Spotify, and sometime soon, over the next week or 2 or 3, it's going to be distributed through many other podcast vehicles. So that's good, get more of an audience. And ideally, it'd be great if many more people do shows like this. So, all right, so that's all we have time for. Watch us, watch this Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon. The episodes are on YouTube. And again, if you have, you know, Spotify, Stitcher, you know, the bunch of like podcast platforms that now cover this series. And then I uploaded all 30 previous episodes, so they're all there. Think about this. Think about God. Think about morality. Think about reward and punishment, judgment, and confront this. You know, because we need to do this. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.